You know, we understand that we are in a battle for the ballot. A war, a struggle, a clash of ideals and ideology between regressive desires to take us backwards and progressive agenda that desires to keep us moving forward towards a more perfect union. And if we ever needed the right to vote protected, we need it right now. One of our founders of the NAACP, W.B. Du Bois, said of the vote that the power of the ballot we need in sheer defense. Else, what else will save us from a second slavery? Without the full access to the ballot, we become slaves to the rule of money. Without access to the ballot, we become slaves to the rule of political meanness. Without access to the ballot, we become slaves to the manipulation of extremism. Last night in the wee hours, though this legislature says they don't like Sunday voting, last night Tillis and Berger passed a budget on Sunday that's mean, a budget that helps the greedy and hurts the needy. They passed this budget on Sunday, a day we're supposed to remember grace, love, fairness, and justice. A budget full of voodoo economics and trickle-down failed policies that hurts teachers and hurts public education and hurts the poor and hurts the working poor. And they passed it under the cover of darkness on the Lord's Day. But the Lord has snatched the covers off, and we can see what they're doing. And now that they've done all these extreme things, they want to suppress the vote so that we will be slaves to their decisions, without every citizen having the ability to register their discontent at the ballot box. When politicians try to suppress and subvert the right to vote, they desecrate the entire struggle for the vote to be in the hands of all people. Touch your neighbor and say, we know history. The history of voting here in America is one in which white property-owning men have been the only people guaranteed to vote since our Constitution was written, which meant only about 16% of the nation's population. Even when we started this nation, poor white men who didn't own land were not allowed to vote. The history of voting is one in which the 15th Amendment guaranteeing the right for African-American men and all men to vote only came after 250 years of slavery, a bloody civil war, and then it took another 50 years for black and white women of other races to be given the right to vote. The right to vote is sacred and it's personal. Even after the 15th Amendment, this right had to be fought for against the attacks of Jim Crow, poll taxes, literacy tests, the words of which, by the way, are still in our state constitution, and lynching and brutality of the Klan. To protect the right to vote, lawyers had to fight against the arguments of separate but equal. To protect the right to vote, Dr. King marched not in '63, but in '57, 3 years after Brown versus Board of Education, on the prayer pilgrimage and freedom into Washington, D.C. And he said then, all types of conniving methods are still being used to prevent Negroes from becoming registered voters. To get the right to vote, people like Medgar Evers and Schwerner Channing Goodman and a white woman named Viola Wusa and many others had to die. To get the right to vote, National Guard troops had to come out. To get the right to vote, people had to march. The Voting Rights Act had to be passed to ensure the enforcement of what had been passed in the 15th Amendment 95 years earlier. black people and minorities are the only people in this country for which the right to vote not only took a constitutional amendment, but then another law had to be passed to ensure the enforcement of the Constitution. And when the Voting Rights Act was passed, only one Republican, these Republicans in this house don't even know who they are, only one Republican voted against the Voting Rights Act, and his name was Strom Thurmond. 111 Republicans voted for the Voting Rights Act. They don't even know their own history. This crowd, they're not Republican or Democrat, they are extremists.